I will call the Region 26 meeting to order at 7:34. And since we're all here, we do not need to do a roll call.
Perfect. So I think we'll just go around and introduce ourselves and the committees we sit on and our names. So I'm Sarah Bass-Kenny. I'm the chair of the region. I am from Pelham and the secretary on the Pelham School Committee.
I'm Margaret Stancer. I'm also from Pelham. I'm the chair of the Pelham School Committee and a member of Union 26 representing Pelham.
I'm Irv Rhodes. I'm chair of Union 26 and vice chair of Amherst School Committee.
I'm Deb Leonard. I'm on the Amherst School Committee from Amherst.
I'm William Scher, and I'm on the I'm the vice chair of the Pelham School Committee. I'm the vice chair of Union 26, and I'm the vice chair of the Region School Committee.
Many hats.
I'm just the vice chair.
Okay.
Always the bridesmaid.
I'm Anna Hurd. I'm on the Shutesbury Elementary School Committee, the Shutesbury School Committee and the Regional School Committee.
Hi, Jennifer Schau from Amherst on the Regional School Committee.
Hi, Tillman Wolf from Leverett.
Sarah Marshall, chair of the Amherst School Committee, and also on Union 26.
Bridget Hines, I'm on the Amherst School Committee as secretary and, right, the third one?
Yeah.
And I'm number 3 on Union 26 too, I believe.
Yes.
Yes, you are.
It's a pleasure to meet all of you. Thank you for having me, and it's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a couple of questions and
Sure.
get to. So first, if you would just like to introduce yourself, what would you like us to know about you? Why do you want to be our superintendent, and what makes you the best person for the job?
And I'm sorry, some of you are going to have to sit through the same thing, so I apologize. Okay, there's 4 main reasons I want to talk about why I think I would be a really good fit for Amherst Pelham. First one is I have a very unique job background and proven ability to develop teams, create leaders, and develop partnerships through collaborative efforts. And let me kind of talk about a little bit about that. I've had the pleasure of really taking an opportunity to, superintendency has always been my goal, and I've made very conscious decisions about what jobs I've taken along the way. Before I was in sales, before I knew I wanted to be in education, but it is a very transferable skill to education, and I think so it brings a unique skill set. It's about marketing the school district. It's about selling the school district in a proactive way, getting the good things out there, and also communication. I also had to worry about, when I was a sales manager, budgets. And in sales, if you do not sell, you make no money. So there are very serious consequences, right? So I'm very comfortable with that, managing people. I also have a nonprofit background. In these tight state budgetary times, I think it's a role of a superintendent to really look at creative ways and out-of-the-box thinking ways to raise money for the district. But I've been very intentional about my moves in education. So I started out teaching, and I've only ever taught middle school, but I taught both science and math, and I made sure that I was exposed to being a specialist teacher. I also taught STEM. As you know, it's a very different animal if you're a content area teacher versus a specialist teacher, and you're viewed very differently, and how you're impacted differently within a school. So I think it's a very powerful thing for a superintendent to know. I then went on and became a STEM curriculum coordinator in Medway, and that was a non-evaluative role. So I really had to rely on building those relationships, having teachers inviting me into their classrooms. It really cemented my idea that relationships need to come first in every single thing I do, right? If I don't build a relationship, I'm not going to be able to connect with anybody and make those positive movements. I went on then from there, and I became an elementary school principal in Petersham. A lot of similarities to Pelham and Petersham. Petersham had 1 grade per school, 1 class per grade, wow. Okay, 1 class per grade. and is a very unique setting. I absolutely love being there. It was a very collaborative team effort. We had a lot of things that we needed to address in the 4 years I was there. Some of the biggest ones were the community had a big want for having after-school enrichment. We were able to build an after-school enrichment program that we had over 100 students participating in on a weekly basis. If a student was in 2 clubs, we were counting them twice, okay? But it's still over 100 students, right? And in Petersham, there was a big want for it to be STEM focused. Harvard Forest, right, is right there in the background. And it was being very respectful about the community needs. Kids absolutely loved it. I taught classes, got my hands back and dirty, and just had fun with them, right? We also knew that literacy scores needed to go up. And we looked as a staff creatively how we were going to do that. We collaboratively built a fluid K through 2 literacy block, which, as you guys know, impacted all the other grades. So we had to get buy-in from the entire staff. It's really exciting to see the fruits of our labor, though, because we had students that were way below grade level reading that were thrilled when they could actually read a book, and those doors were open for those students. So it made a huge, huge impact, and we brought in Tier 3 instruction too, which we did not have. I then went on to right down the road in Gil Montague. I became a secondary principal, grades 6 through 12. I knew I needed to do that to be taken seriously with staff as a superintendent, to have that global view and have that lens K through 12. So I made that move, and I was tasked with the person that hired me is one of your consultants right now, Michael Sullivan, and he tasked me with, he's a mentor and he will be the rest of my life, but he tasked me with three major things I needed to do. One was address racism issues that had not been addressed in the past. Look at opportunities for students, that academic opportunities that were not there. And it was also to bring up the culture and climate of the school, of both staff and students, which was not doing so well at the time. So we did a lot of growth in the 2 years I was there. Sadly, there were a lot of examples of racism that had happened in the previous time, and I got a really in-the-face lesson about that. My first day on the job, I met middle school students that were there for summer school, and a student just came, a student of color, just screaming at me and just saying, are you going to change this, or are you just going to be like everybody else and not address it? So it's like, oh my gosh, okay, I can create a lot of positive change here. I need to do this now. So we brought in the collaborative from Northampton, because I knew that I did not have the skill set to do that or the training to do that. We brought an incredible group in that we really struggled with as a staff, really kind of doing deep dives into our own biases and really getting to know our own microaggressions and going through that whole process. And then we got into, there are social justice standards, and there are proven methods of how to combat racism in the moment. We were trained by the collaborative in 4 different strategies that you use right in the moment. I learned alongside my staff. We did those together. We practiced and role played on each other. We took out actual situations that had happened prior to me getting there and talked about those and practiced with each other. Once they got comfortable, I said, okay, as a principal, I don't care which strategy you use, but you have to use a strategy, and there is no exception to not addressing it in the moment. You now have been trained. You said you were not comfortable before. Is everybody comfortable? Yes, we are comfortable. I told students in front of, it's a little bit different. We had a structure that we had a weekly high school meeting with all students and staff, and we had a bi-weekly all-school meeting for the middle school. At those meetings, I stood up and talked about what we did, what we were trained in, my expectations for teachers, and I said, if you do not feel we're meeting those expectations, you need to come to me, you need to come to the assistant principal, or you need to go to a teacher and tell them about it. We are going to make mistakes, but we are going to try. We are going to learn together. I took that a little bit further, and I knew that that was not the only thing that we had not addressed in the schools. I know students were unhappy for a lot of different reasons. They felt like they were not being heard, their voice did not matter. I created culture and climate clubs that it was not what you would qualify as your top performing students. I went out and seeked out students who were in trouble a lot, who got in fights, and I wanted to get that broad perspective of what they experienced and how they felt about it. I held those on the beginning. It was like every other week, and then we got to weekly, and they told me about a lot of things they wanted to see in the school. There were some things that did not make sense, but there were a lot of, and I told them why it wouldn't work, right? It wasn't like, that's a silly idea. I validated them and said, you know, there was either like a time constraint, a budgetary constraint, something, right? More importantly, we instituted their ideas, and they knew it was their ideas. And so then it just created positive change. Saw a lot of smiles. We did a lot of silly things too. The beginning, I asked them, we used to roll out red carpet in Peter Sam and had welcome the students back. And I said to the middle school and high school students, is that too cheesy for you? And they're like, no. And so they're like, hey, we have some other ideas. You know, it's Mondays are really tough. And I'm like, Mondays are tough for staff too. What do you got? And they're like, can we play music when you're coming in? I'm like, absolutely. You know, and it just kind of snowballed. It was very positive, and we saw a lot of positive change from that. Also, we did not have a lot of opportunities for academics in Gil Montague. It's a smaller district. We were really trying to get creative with, okay, we wanted to not give up depth of offerings, and so we were starting to offer things on an every other year basis and communicating that to students, so at least they knew and they could plan that and still take advantage of that. But more importantly, we were able to successfully write 2 innovation pathways programs for Gil Montague, which is extremely powerful for them. The first one, healthcare and social assistance. The second, advanced manufacturing. I don't know, I'm not trying to insult anybody. If anybody doesn't know, you have to base those on what the county you live in, what their needs are for workforce, right? And so that's what drove it at that time in Franklin County. Healthcare and social assistance was the #1 need, and advanced manufacturing was the #2 need. I went out into the community, convinced businesses to partner with us. And what I was really excited about for the advanced manufacturing, that they said, because I can never remember this, I want to say it's a LEED certification. Does anybody know in manufacturing?
It's in construction, architecture.
Yeah, so it's one of those, but they were leaving with a level 2 certification. And the business were saying, if they can perform and they do good work, we're going to offer them a job when they come out of high school, right? True difference for the students. We were bringing in outside business people talking about their professions, educating students. I told them, when you're sitting there, critically think about, does that interest you? Does it not? You need to start eliminating things, or think about, I'm really passionate about that. So really looking at the changes there. From there, I knew I could not go from being a principal to a superintendent. There's a huge leap there, and you really need experience at the central administration level. You're doing yourself, in my opinion, a huge disservice. I have learned so much in the 3 years that I've been, 2+ years that I've been there. And it really is a whole different world that I knew that I had to experience. I've been extremely lucky that my superintendent, it's not common in Metro West for a superintendent to have an assistant superintendent join a lot of different things. I sit on all policy subcommittee meetings for the school committee, all communication subcommittee meetings, all budgetary subcommittee meetings. I'm part of the negotiations. We've clocked over 25 hours at this point. Do not have a settled program or settled contract. I'm part of Tri-County Superintendency Union. I'm part of a lot of state organizations. And why I think that's important to say is I would bring a lot of knowledge back and a lot of contacts to Amherst Pelham. People are extremely, the superintendency world I have found to be extremely welcoming, and I'm very involved at the state level that I just pick up the phone a lot of times and say, hey, have you guys ever experienced this? And it's a really friendly way to go. So I really feel that all of those experiences have set me up to become a superintendent. To me, you need all those skill sets. I've also had hands-on personal experience with tough situations. I already talked to you about the racial instances. Title IX, I'm sorry, did I talk about in here? I don't think so, thank you. I'm sorry, after you repeated yourself like 5 times, I'm like, have I said it to this group? I apologize. So Holliston is roughly about the same size as Amherst. And people wear many different hats, just like here. So in my role, I have in charge of all the curriculum, but I'm also in charge of all of the L's, all of civil rights, all grants, all the curriculum reviews, DESE audits that we've had. I've been in charge of gathering all the information for our strategic plan, for our equity audit. So I wear a lot of different hats. One of them used to be Title IX. For the first 2 years I was Title IX. My superintendent has pulled that away, and we're kind of shifting what we do. But in Title IX, I was in charge of all the investigations for the district. I found a lot of different ways that we could improve. We took a lot of different strategies with that based on what had happened in our district. We took a multi-pronged approach. In the policy subcommittee meeting, I worked with the school committee along with, we had parents coming who are professors, I don't know if it's BCBU, who have transgender children coming and advising us about policies that we should use. We had, I have a contact, DESE, Landon Callahan with Safe and Supportive Schools. He advised us on how we should be embedding the new wellness standards and gender identity throughout, all of those things. So I'm very comfortable doing that. I'm also addressing a lot of equity in curriculum. I have the pleasure, this is my 2nd year, being in a statewide program called Influence 100. That's DESE has started, and one of the sole purposes was of educating future superintendents on making sure that they are concentrating on equity for all within the districts they will be in. And really kind of drilling home to us, it's not a separate thing, it's embedded in every single decision you make. We are taking that very seriously in Holliston. We've embedded it all in our curriculum reviews and how we choose curriculum. We look at DESE's curriculum guidance. We've Hollistonized it and created our curriculum review, and we go through the process. We have representation. We have forums all the time with community members. We have forums with staff members. It's all about getting ahead. And I wanted to talk about another thing I'd bring to the table is that relationships and communication. I think it's really important to be proactive, get the message out there. If the district is not sharing a message, people are making up their own stories, and it's usually not good. And that's for any district. I'm not talking about Amherst Pelham, right? That's in general. And I would borrow from my current superintendent. We've had, unfortunately, some anti-Semitic situations multiple times since I've been there. She's made it a policy anytime anything happens without divulging anything about anybody involved in the situation. She's educating the community about what has happened, what we are doing about it, and what steps we're taking, right? I, as a superintendent, would do the same thing, but I would also have open forums. I said this at one of the, I don't know who I was with, but one of you, I think in a staff forum, somebody asked me, it was very evident they just wanted to be heard. I need to have open forums so people can feel heard and valued. That needs to be out in the community at places you tell me would be good places. Could it be the Lions Club? Yes, I don't know what the good place is here, right? Could it be the library? Could it be, I don't know where to go. Gil Montague, I had principal chats all the time. For the life of me, I cannot remember what it's called. There's a community center downtown, like a half a block off Main Street, that I would go to and have forums, right? You need to get out there and get ahead of it and hear people's feedback. Take notes, look them in the eye, take them seriously, but then do follow-up. And then it's having community newsletter. As a principal, I did this. I was kind of my own worst enemy, and I would have to think about how often I would do it, because I was having weekly newsletters for staff and bi-weekly for the community, and that became a really heavy lift because I was embedding like 150 pictures in each newsletter. Yeah, so that became a very heavy lift, and I didn't have anybody else doing that, so I'm like, need to rethink that. But I think it's important to get that out there, and I would want to work with you and townspeople to see, can those newsletters be put on town websites? Can they, somehow get out to the community, right? And it's really important, I was telling the students today, to get out. I saw some amazing things here. I am an outsider right now. I want to be with all of you, but I'm not reading about those positive things as an outsider. And we need to get that positive news. There was a teacher, and you guys helped me out. What school was I at with the art teacher that... Crocker?
Someone said Crocker.
Okay, I'm sorry, thank you. She did an amazing job and had some really positive news. That's what needs to happen, right? The positive news starts to snowball. It needs to be out there. It's easier for you guys to do your jobs when we're in the budget crunches and trying to sell budgets, right, out there. People need to see the amazing things. You need to get ahead of it and be proactive. That's something I would bring to the table. And last, what I wanted to talk about is I really do I weave myself into the fabric of the community. I become part of the community. And what I mean by that is, I know this would be a little bit different because I would be with all of you many nights with school committee meetings, right? But on those off nights is that I would want to attend as many things as I can. It's very powerful to show students and staff that I'm supporting them. I met one of the high school students, one of the alums that was taking me around today. I found out that she used to play softball, and we ran into another student that plays softball, and I said, oh, you don't want to hear where I used to be? And she's like, what are you talking about? I said, I was principal for Turner's Falls, and she's like, you're right, I don't want to hear that, And I said, I was at all the games, and I was there to support them. I think that's important. And, you don't get recognized for that. It's not to be recognized. And all the times I've been a principal, somebody said something to me positive once, and that's not what it's about. It's the kids do know you're there. The parents do know you're there. So, and you get a bonus because you get my husband because he tags along with me and does everything. So, but yes, so those are, I know it wasn't succinct, but a lot of different reasons and the skill set that I could bring to Amherst, and I would be thrilled to be here and part of your community.
Thank you. So
You're welcome.
we have a few more questions.
Sure, go for it.
So given the makeup of our 3 separate districts, tell us about your experience in working collaboratively with multiple stakeholders, including individual school committees and multiple municipal government bodies. Can you provide examples of successful partnerships that you
Absolutely.
have forged?
So right now, let me give you an example for where I am right now. Something that I thought was brilliant on my superintendent's, she set this all up, which I thought was brilliant because it got buy-in from everybody. We developed, my first year in the district, we developed a 3-year strategic plan. And in that committee, I can't remember if it was 21 people or 23, I apologize. But in that committee, remember, we're not a regional school district. We had our town manager, we had our select board chair, we had 2 school committee members, we had 2 high school students, we had principals, we had central admin, and we had parents, and we had teachers. I don't know if they said that. It was a real collaborative effort because we all collectively agreed in the direction the district wanted to go in. That document we have laminated, and it's up in our central office conference room. And we have taken that document, and I and the curriculum people have built a district-wide template for all PD that happens within the district for every single school. It's the same template, and within that template, we need to state what strategic initiative we are addressing. We also need to state which DESE PD standard we are addressing. Okay, so we are saying that we are meeting DESE's requirement for PD in order for teachers to get their professional development points, right? So they can see that. We are telling them we have all of the agendas in the staff portal. They can easily access that, print those out for when they go and get renewals of their licenses. That's a really nice collaborative experience. I am on budget subcommittee currently right now too. We have FinCom members come and obviously school committee members there. You know, I am in a situation because we're in our second year of math review. We have some capital expenses, so I'm there being questioned a lot about what we've done, why we're saying this, how much money we're coming up with, all of that. So I'm very part of those discussions and really providing talking points so people can defend those numbers. Some other examples are, I gave you an example when different stakeholders, but when we were creating that K through 2 literacy block within Petersham, you know, working collaboratively with the teachers. Another example in Petersham was, again, this was with the teachers. We had a rough year and I knew that we didn't have a lot of extra meat in our budget and I knew that we had to make cuts. This was back in the days where I had to keep a manual book. I had 99 budget line item for my budget. I had to keep paper copies of receipts and justify everything I spent. So I put it in the outside office and I said, it's here. Please come here, look at everything to the staff members, and you tell me if you guys can see anything. Let's brainstorm together and figure out what we can do that's not gonna impact students. So brought them into the mix. They were also part of the mix of making that schedule. Part of the mix now, let me give you some other examples of different stakeholders in collaboration, is in curriculum reviews. We, you know, didn't have them for quite a few years in Holliston, and now we have built a review that I'm basically a observer, bystander, and person that they can go for information if they don't know it. But the STEM curriculum coordinator has run the math curriculum review, okay? And I've just been there for qualifying questions. This committee on a whole has taken it upon themselves to look, we have certain parameters, and one of them is that we can only look at curate rated products. You know, DESE has asked teachers to say how much they're connected to the standards, how accessible they are for L students, how accessible they are for SPED students. They have to look at that, but other than that, they've been able to make recommendations, and part of the committee is, I'm just making this up, if you're a third grade teacher, the expectation is you are going back and talking to the other third grade teachers and having conversations and bringing that information back. So they were able to decide on resources they wanted to pilot. It was not top down, it was not me saying it, you know, all of that. They came up with that, they piloted it, we had math forums with the community, school committee members were there. I have to constantly announce progress on math for the math curriculum review during school committee meetings. We've communicated all of that. But it's really been on the math forum, it was those committee members presenting and not me. I just facilitated the questions and answers after. I am very much about empowering others and showcasing their talents and really elevating them, because that's what makes people want to stay. That's what makes them happy. That's what hooks them in, you know, to a district. They presented it. They took the questions from the parents, not me, unless they were looking at me like, please answer this question, and then I, you know, would help them out. Another example is that we have a lot of different curriculum staff and tech integration specialists, and we are in a situation where Holliston was not, staff members were not happy with STAR. We were using STAR as benchmark data, and they wanted to look at something else. So he's on this committee, principals joined it too. Again, they got to vet all the products. You know, I again was just sitting there. It's very much bottom-up driven. I had to remind them of budgetary constraints, you know, things like that, right? But other than that, it was them driving it, right? That's going to get the buy-in from the teachers. That's getting them excited about it. That is going to create that vertical and horizontal alignment that were the same. So I can keep on going, but okay, yeah, those are just some examples.
So in an environment where school budgets have to contend with rising costs and limitations on what the state and towns can provide, what is your vision for ensuring that our students receive high quality, academically rigorous education with sufficient choices and support? And how have you managed this in the past?
So let me talk about first how I've managed it in the past, and then I will talk about here. How I've managed it in the past is, I gave you the example in Peter Sam, but let me give you an example in Medway. We did not have the resources to bring in high quality science professional development for our teachers, and that's when I was STEM curriculum coach, and I knew we did not have funds to do it. And I'm like, how in the heck are we going to do this? And I'm all about building partnerships and creating those partnerships. I was part of the when Deval Patrick, so I'm dating myself, was governor. I was, yes, I know, a blast from the past. I was on his governor's STEM advisory council. And so I had a lot of different contacts from there, and I reached out to a lot of different groups and companies to see if they would be willing to come in and work with our teachers. They were struggling, I'm going to give you a very specific example, but they were struggling with isometric sketches, and they didn't really see the need, and like not kind of struggling with it themselves, right? So I was able to bring in engineers that they worked with the teachers to develop PD on that, and then actually work with the teachers, right? That was a very creative way, and guess what? It was $0. And I had some very excited, hooked-in parents, right? And I documented the heck out of that and put it in community newsletters, right? Let them know what we were doing. Let me give you another example. Well, let me first talk about, I just finished, I know I'm so young, but I finished my doctoral dissertation last school year. And I graduated last May from University of Hartford. And my dissertation was, I don't even remember my title anymore, but here we go. It was, I know, I kind of put that to bed, but it was building a STEM pipeline between public secondary schools, colleges, and businesses. That is my passion, and I have had to create those on my own everywhere I've been. I'm part of the STEM networks within the state, too. I have brought up to Karen Polito when I was in a training. She point blank asked us, how can we make it easier? I said, something that continuously blows my mind is we are one of, if not the top state in STEM. And we are not, the government is not providing any kind of contacts that public schools, colleges, and businesses can connect. And you're also ignoring the districts that do not have those assets in their district, right? And that was kind of eye-opening for her, but I've always had to build that on my own. I did that in Gil Montague. I'm not afraid to do that. That's where my sales background comes in here. Last night in the community forum, I honestly never met this woman, and she was not a ringer, but she's from Amherst College, that asked me point blank what I envisioned seeing to do with a partnership, right, and how they would help in my onboarding process. I was like, wow, it's like, oh my gosh, seriously? And I've never had that. And that is something that I would want to build and foster and evolve and change. Part of my dissertation was definitely finding out that we in the United States are not doing a great job of preparing our secondary students to go out in the workforce. We're not building those critical thinking skills. We're not building those collaborative skills. That's something I would want to look at here. And I know there's a lot of project-based learning here, but collaboration is not just known. You're not born with that skill set. It has to be taught. You have to nurture that and do that. And I don't care what you do after secondary school, you're going to have to collaborate with people and learn to work with them, right? And I'm really excited because now to go to what I would do here is like tap into all of that, and tap in to so many like expertise here. I had the pleasure when I was still teaching science, this was years and years ago, I came for a week-long class, a nanotechnology class at UMass Amherst, you know, and brought some things down to when I was teaching 8th grade, right? It's just like the possibilities are endless, and it's just like super, super exciting. But it would not just be partnerships with colleges, it would be partnerships with businesses, right? Part of being, if you're a, and I take this from my husband is a business owner, and part of his philosophy is making sure that he's giving back to the community and part of the community and helping students out. And a lot of business owners feel that way, right? And so just tap into that want to help the local school district and see how you can help out. You asked me about different offerings, though. I think you need to be creative in what you do, and I kind of alluded to that before, and I'm sorry, I don't know if it was this question or I'm going back to your question, I don't know, but I think you really need to look at too with smaller school districts. I don't want to limit students' exposure to exciting things and ignite their passion. And if it's like getting creative and maybe offering this class every other year and communicating it to students so they know that's only available then. It's like getting really creative, but also working with partners. I did have the pleasure, I worked very closely with Greenfield Community College when I was the principal over at Gilmontague. That's an incredible program. I just ran into one of my old students a couple weekends ago. It was doing amazing, and she was able to get like 3 years of credit. You know, and I was like, wow. So using all those different strategies and really tapping into the partners and building those relationships and continuing that relationship and keeping them abreast of all the wonderful things we're doing here. So.
Great. Okay, so how do you prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in hiring practices? Can you share strategies you have used to recruit, retain diverse and high-quality staff members?
So that's multi-pronged. We're looking at when you are a person, like right now, you guys are communicating to me what you are prioritizing based on the questions you're giving me. Okay, I can read that, right? So same thing, when we're interviewing candidates, we need to communicate our values of equity inclusion in there, right? The questions need to be based on that. It needs to be clear in the message that we value that, we want that. If you're not interested in that, you might want to rethink of where you're looking, right? So it needs to be communicated, first of all, in that way. And we need to think about, as a district, and I would want community input on this and different stakeholders' input, what are those questions? And there should be some consistent district questions that answer those and dig into those areas, right? It's also, it's not about, and this is in Influence 100 and my assistant superintendent groups, we're talking about it all the time. You can recruit somebody, but if you're not welcoming to them within your environment, school environment, you're gonna lose them. And unfortunately, I have been in districts that we have lost them. I have asked them, you know, some of them have shared with me, you know, what could we have done? What do we need to do? They were very enlightening to me. Some changes I have made in my hats. I'm in charge of New Teacher Institute too. So we have made changes to New Teacher Institute and what mentors do with their new teachers to support that, right? We've also, we're trying to be, you know, I would like to look in Holliston, we have not looked at this, but I would love to look at it here because of the environment. There are a lot of school districts, especially out in Metro West, that have programs of paraprofessionals being able to do work to become a teacher, right? And there's clear paths that the district is supporting that, right? I would want to look to see if that would work, right? I would want to look at really cementing the relationships with these colleges here, trying to go to diverse job fairs here, getting out there, showing my face, you know, kind of really meeting people and say, we want you here, right? It would be looking at different things. It's really interesting because I'm in Influence 100 and I am definitely in the minority. And I have asked point blank my colleagues in that group, there are some that have affinity groups for different groups of educators, and then there's some that don't. So it's really interesting. Some people are, yes, I want them, and some people, these are like really insulting, no, I don't want these. So it's really interesting. I would want to hear what people want to hear, right? I find that really interesting, and we don't have the ability. I'm trying to get my colleagues in Metro West to share some kind of affinity group because we don't have a lot of diverse staff. So we would have to partner with other districts, and we're having those conversations to build those affinity groups. Out on the Cape, they are doing that already. They're kind of joining together and giving support to people that is needed. So it's really kind of looking at a lot of different areas. In order to retain people too, though, they need to feel welcome, and they need to feel that the administration and school committees taking it seriously, that we are protecting people, we have policies to protect people, we back up teachers when they're doing things, we address, racism, we address any kind of, microaggression or anything like that. They need to see that. If they're seeing we're not addressing it with the students, they definitely, somebody share with me, then you're definitely not addressing it with staff.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you provide examples of how you have ensured the academic success and thriving of students from diverse backgrounds, including English language learners, special education students, LGBTQ1A plus students, BIPOC students, and other historically marginalized communities?
Mm-hmm. So some of those things, and let me just kind of quickly mention some of the things I've already mentioned, right? So we're embedding that in all our curriculum reviews, right? That is embedded in everything. And I apologize, please stop me if I've said this idea to you, because I know I've said it multiple times today, and I don't think I've said it to you. Another thing I want to look at, in Influence 100, we're giving a lot of rubrics on equity and how that looks in schools and in classrooms. I would want to, I need to figure out a verb for Amherst Pelham, because I always say Hollistonize it. But I would want to take those and create look-fors within classrooms. So what does that mean? What does it mean that students would be doing an experience, and what does that mean that teachers would be doing? That would be collaboratively built with all stakeholders, right? I want to get community input, school committee input, teachers, principals, all of that, right? Student input, right? And once that's decided upon, it's not a got you, that is shared with staff, and those are expectations of what it's going to look like in Amherst Pelham, right? And that would be used for learning walkthroughs. I've had the pleasure of being trained by DESE on learning walkthroughs. I would want to institute that here, where the senior administrators collectively go together. In Holliston, there's, I forget, 21 of us, 22 of us, that we go around. It's central admin, it's principals, it's assistant principals, and it's student services providers, that we collectively go around to the schools. The teachers know that we're coming beforehand. We say what the focus is, we share our rubrics with them, and we share out our findings, and we share it with the community, right? But it's very clear expectations that you are setting, that you are saying that all students are going to be looked after and thought about and considered. Part of what curate rating does is look at SPED and all the marginalized communities, right? One thing that I have the pleasure, one of my other hats is I'm in charge of the English Language Learner Program. In our district, we have 5 English language learner teachers. I meet with them on a monthly basis. I'm also part of all family events that we have. Students and families are very forthcoming about what their needs are. In Holliston, the biggest language spoken besides English is Portuguese, so we need to make sure to take that under consideration. We also have a unique situation in Holliston that we have a French immersion program, so we need to make sure that we're taking that into consideration and meeting those needs. So I'm very cognizant of looking at all that. I want to address something that I know is part of my capstone project for Influence 100 is what changes we are making in Holliston to open opportunities up for all of those different groups when you hit high school. Because a lot of times marginalized groups are shut out of different opportunities. And, after talking in the district I'm at right now, realizing that in Holliston we're not doing a good job with the L families because I lived in South Korea for 3 years, and I know it would have been disrespectful in South Korea when I was there. I was there in 1990 for 3 years, and they really respected teachers' views, and they were never going to question those. And a lot of the families that we have from different countries feel the same way, and they don't realize we're not doing a good job of, a student can take this class. APs are open to all. You can look at this, right? And we need to communicate that differently. So that's part of the academic success too. I've talked to a lot of high school students in Holliston. They weren't even aware that they could take these classes. And that's alarming to me. We're not encouraging it. We're not advertising it. We're not saying how they can access that class. So that would also be an area that we need to look at. Something we do, I do a lot of deep data dives, and it is concerning about the groups that are taking APs and the groups that are not taking APs. And part of Innovation Pathways does an incredible job with that. And one of the reasons I really loved it for Gil Montague was that DESE requires you that you have to open that for all. And in Innovation Pathways, you have to take 2 AP classes. And you as a district have to tell DESE how you are going to support students on IEPs, 504s, L students, all of that, right? And I think that's very powerful, and I think that's a very powerful message. If somebody in a group is hearing or sensing that they can't take something, then shame on the school district, right? We need to open it up.
All right. Can you share with us the actions you've taken or strategies that you've put in place to foster safety and inclusivity within schools, particularly concentrating on supporting vulnerable populations such as neurodivergent or LGBTQ plus students?
I know this is a little off topic, but I just wanted to tell you safety. In my roles as principals, and then I know this doesn't answer your question, I'll get to that in a second. I've been very cognizant of working with police, and I'm on the safety team too, just keeping all students safe, right? What improvements we can make, especially with all like the school shootings and what we need to do. But it boils down to safety for all. The director of social emotional learning and I have a lot of discussions around this, and he's also in Influence 100 with me. And we talk about it. It boils down to people need to feel like they belong, right? It's to build that sense of belonging and that you matter and you belong. And it's removing barriers for students that make them feel like they don't belong. How do I know what those barriers are? I have specifically asked students what has prevented them. Joni can think this might be preventing them, and I talk to the students, and that's not the case, right? So I need to go to the students themselves and find out what has prevented you. Why do you not feel like you could join this? And students are very open and forthcoming, and that's how you can make positive change. I go back to them and ask them to advise. I'm like, well, how could you feel involved? How could you feel included? Do you have any ideas? And usually they do, and they're pretty darn good.
All right. Could you describe your experience leading a school community through a crisis? What strategies did you use to help rebuild trust and heal a divided community? What did you learn? What would you repeat? And what would you do differently?
I'm going to go back. I'm not going to go in the details about Gil Montague again, but I'm going to use the racism example and kind of talk to you about. I was amazed because I did not know why teachers were not addressing it. And it blew me away to discover that they did not feel like they were ever trained. And so it came down to like, all right, we can make positive change for that. So what did I learn from that is I can never make assumptions. I have to go to the people that are impacted and find out what is the real story, right? I need to find out why can't we do that? What's preventing us from doing that? Or why did that happen, right? You also asked about what I would repeat. I would repeat, to go to that same example, I got a lot of buy-in because we did it together. We went through PD together. We used actual examples of what happened in that school. We practiced with each other. We practiced until we were comfortable as we could be. And I would also repeat that I held us all accountable by telling the students what we were doing and having the students hold us accountable. What would I do differently? What I would do differently is, I think even though I was having forums with parents, there was a lot of built up frustration from the parent end that I think what I would do differently is have more opportunities for people to voice their concerns and their experiences. Even though I was providing that, I think they needed more. What I would do differently too is I was communicating what was going on, but I would communicate more, right? I would look at different avenues to get that message out. I was going to, I was having chats at the school, I was having chats in the community, but I still wasn't reaching a lot of people. So I needed to dig deeper and find out, where would people come? Where would people show up, right? I think what I would have done differently is I would have somehow tried to look at a grant to see if I could have had a family event that we could have had, like a summer event, and had, I'm just making this up, hot dogs and hamburgers or something, or ice cream, and had conversations with people on their turf, right, at their homeland where they're more comfortable. I think it's a lot of parents have had, growing up themselves, did not have great school experiences. So if I'm asking them to come into school, it's a very threatening situation, even though I might not make it that way just because of their past experiences. And I need to create more opportunities to meet people in different areas that is not at school.
Are there any questions the committee would like to ask? Sarah?
I've heard you mention this a couple times, and I would love to know what it is and more about it, and that is
Sure.
an equity audit.
Yes. So we brought in, they're quite expensive, and we brought in an outside agency. It was $42,500, like maybe something like that, right? And that's like on the cheaper end. So outside people came in, and there's so many ways you can look at equity, right? So we had to define what areas we wanted them to look at. A lot of ours was access to classes, looking at disparities in data and what curriculum has been provided. It has been looked at how students can get into the French immersion program. We also have a Montessori program, how they can access that, right? But they compiled this report. From this report, it was a pretty thick report. They came to the school committee and presented it. From this report, our Director of Social Emotional Learning and Equity is leading a steering committee. I'm on that steering committee. We meet monthly. It has principals, central admin, I guess he and I are the only central admin, one principal, lots of teachers, lots of parents, and parents from marginalized groups, which is more important. We actually recruited different people, and we actually got students on there too. So we're having these really difficult conversations. They kind of gave us a really long laundry list of recommendations. And so we are having this group come together and prioritize those, right? And so we're reporting out at school committee meetings and also putting it in newsletters and out there, but it's a community effort. It's, again, not top down. It's what the community thinks is the most important thing for that. But equity audits can be determined, you know, you can look at so many different things. You could look at equity in discipline. You could look at equity in curriculum. You can look, you know, I mean, there's so many different ways. So in Metro West, it's a very, it's becoming more common. And because there is a high price tag to it, people are kind of drilling in just to certain areas that they're concentrating on. You're welcome. Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Our next superintendent will be hiring an assistant superintendent, and we'll have a new director of student services. Can you give us some insight into what your central office team would look like ideally, and how you would interact with each other and the rest of the?
Yeah, so kind of like my leadership style type thing?
Well,
Okay.
but with focus on central office.
Yes, yeah. So I am one of 6 people at our central office, right? So we have superintendent, me, the assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction, and another assistant superintendent of business and finance. We have a director of technology and digital learning. We have director of social emotional learning and equity, and we have a director of student services. So those are the 6 people that we have. If I become superintendent, I would want it to be very much a shared leadership role, and let me explain what I mean by that. Central office is you have your own areas, right? Your own areas that you're responsible for, right? Other than superintendent that needs to oversee everything. I think it's really important to be central office member and superintendent to have a clear understanding of what everybody is doing in like an elevator speech kind of way. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So that we have shared responsibility in meetings. It's not me driving the agenda all the time. Maybe I have a small portion of the agenda, but the central administrators, and it's based on need. Like, so I'm just going to make this up. We had a special ed audit that a lot of us had to contribute to. We needed to give a lot to Jess for her audit, right? She needed a lot of time with us. So she would drive that agenda, right? It's based on that. But it's building that relationship that we have shared leadership. I'm very much about empowering others. I want people to grow. I've been very, very lucky in my life that I've had people doing that and providing opportunities for me. And I want to do the same for the central administration, right? To me, a sign of a good leader is building other strong leaders, right? And for like a superintendent, not to take all the credit because you have an amazing staff, right? And you have all these people. One thing I want to be very conscious of, and I might have done it here, and I apologize if I did. If I say that's a mistake on my part because it really is a collective effort. It's a we type thing. I'm very collaborative with that, but I'm not afraid to make the hard decisions, right? I want all that information from people, but make the hard decisions. I think that it's building a team that people are comfortable to stretch and grow and take chances and not be afraid, as long as they're being upfront with me of possible ramifications so I can be upfront with you. So I think it's very, I'm very much I will support people as long as you give me the heads up, and you should expect the same from me, right? You should not be blindsided by anything. In my opinion, and I've always been a firm believer that as a principal and as central admin. I think that it is important that there is time for central administration to have a summer retreat and kind of get their head around what the school year looks like and the vision, so all the players are on the same page. But I also think that it's important to build the team, and people need to feel safe to make suggestions that I am not going to scoff at, that I am going to respect along with everybody else. But it's very much a shared leadership I don't think a district can make a lot of positive changes unless you have that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any, Irv?
I'm
Yeah.
impressed with a lot of things you've said.
Thank you.
I'm also impressed with some of your resumes, and especially Browning Fairs and Waste Management at the same time.
Can I tell you my nickname?
Yeah, I would like to know that. I mean, those are two fierce competitors.
Yes, I was Potty Princess, and I was a dumpster queen. And let me give you some other history. This is Columbus, Ohio, in 1989. I was a part of, you can kind of see a theme here. I always try to take leadership roles. So I was in the Chamber of Commerce Young Blood Organization. And all that meant was young professionals that had an excuse to go out together, right? But we also set up job fairs and, construction fairs, right? And I was approached by, I worked for Browning Fairs Industries first. And I was approached by the competitor, and we had some collusion going on, so I had to have some very secretive interviews. That was very interesting because there were some grand jury investigations going on. So it was...
They are not a stranger to those, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. And then we went, I was hoping to continue to work for Waste Management, and we went to South Korea, and sadly Waste Management did not exist in South Korea, so at that time.
So,
Yes. Sorry, I got sidetracked.
there are a couple more questions.
Yes.
What, in your position that you're in right now, what is the makeup of your staff or the people within your district in relationship to race?
Very sad and probably not measurable.
Not measurable. And what
Yes.
about student population and demographics there?
We do not have a very diverse background. It's smaller than Gilmontague was. So Holliston is predominantly a white community.
Right.
Yep.
So, in your one other part of this, in terms of your background, in terms of staff that you have overseen, supervised, etc., have you had any significant experience with a multi-ethnic, multicultural, gender
Staff?
Yes.
Some, not as much as I would like, right? I think what I can bring to the table there, and let me tell you, my husband and I lived in South Korea for 3 years when it was still a third world country. I was definitely the minority because of how I look. I got a very small taste of what that feels like, right? Obviously, I don't feel that every day. I got a very, very small taste of that. That changes my view of the world. That makes me, I'm very much a global thinker. I am very much about celebrating our differences and what experiences we bring to the table and valuing those and showing people that we value those. And I'm very much about celebrating all of that, and that is why I joined Influence 100. Part of Influence 100, I am, I think, one of 3 white assistant superintendents or leaders in that group. Part of it is being an ally to all those other groups and supporting that work and speaking up for people to do that work, to remove barriers for that work to be done, to make sure that I'm communicating that the district is expecting this, right? We are treating all these groups with respect. Everybody belongs here, and I'm not going to accept anything other than that. I know I present very differently, but I'm trying to do what's within my power to do and support that learning. I would want to look at Influence 100 and a lot of different trainings that DESE have. They bring their leadership team too. And it's a whole different way of thinking and approaching everything, that everything is about equity. All decisions are about equity. I would really kind of like to look at that so that everybody has that same mindset and is bringing that to the table. and is thinking about that in all the decisions they make as their principal, and whatever decisions they make, right? But I need to be a supporter and an ally and call things out and hold people accountable, and I will continue to do that. I will try to bring as many experiences I've had, but I have not had a lot of multicultural staff. My director of social emotional learning and equity, we have a lot of conversations. He is Puerto Rican, and we have a lot of different conversations about, we are brutally honest with each other, and we call each other out on things, and he always stretches me to grow in my learning. I also chose University of Hartford for a reason, because it's a very diverse group in my cohort, and some of my best friends that are going to be best friends for life, are from Puerto Rico, and they're constantly calling me out on things. I have put myself in situations that I have good friends that they're comfortable enough to call me out, and I'm comfortable enough to hear it and try to do something about it. So I purposely put myself in situations that is going to continue to force me to grow.
William?
If staff members fail to use appropriate pronouns for LGBTQIA+ students, resulting in harm and discomfort, how would you address this issue to repair the harm done and prevent future incidences? Additionally, how would you foster a culture of accountability and learning within the school community to ensure that all staff members understand the importance of using correct pronouns and are equipped to support LGBTQI+ students?
Yes, so I've lived this. So, yes, so a couple different things. So, a lot's about education, right? There are laws now that a lot of people are not aware of. We need to educate people about laws. We need to talk to them about our district's beliefs and what our core values are, and everything needs to be based on that, right? It needs to be clearly communicated to staff that this is the expectation, and like spell it out, right? Not in front of other people, but have those conversations separately, right? It is supporting staff in bringing outside professional development in. Like I've already talked about Landon Callahan, right? What I love about Landon, our last professional development day, and he presented to all 4 schools. They rotated through him, and he had exercises, age-appropriate exercises of things that happen at all different levels, and how would the teachers address it, and do they think it's appropriate? And then he came back and educated people about it. So there was a lot of appropriate discourse going on, and there was a lot of education on his part about, that would be correct or no, it wouldn't because of this. We are looking at changes because of that as a district. We are looking at potential, we use Power School, and if we can do some things within Power School, there's students that want to be called something else other than their given name, right? Do we have the ability to add another column, right? We're looking at all sorts of different things. I told you guys about the policies that we built, right? It's my responsibility to communicate. I got asked by one of your committees last night too. It's my responsibility to communicate out to staff what our policies are, and we need to follow those, right? And this policy that we have, I'd have to look at actually the policy to know when we did that. Was that last year or this year? I'm not sure. Last year, I want to say. But it's about what does this mean in the classroom and what does this look like, right, and supports. And there's a lot of different, I always say multi-pronged approach, but there's never one way to solve a problem. You have to attack it from many different ways, right? Because you're never going to get traction if you don't. Yeah, I think a lot of it is, it's interesting because I think, I am much older than a lot of you, and times have changed. There were a lot of situations when I was growing up, I grew up in Ohio, that in classes you were separated by gender. That we need to make sure that you are not doing that anymore, right? Especially like in health classes, the boys go over here, the girls go over here. Can't do that, right? And talk through why that's not appropriate, right? So it's a lot of learning. I've had a lot of practical experience in it. People are at all different places, but it's very important to communicate that these are the values of this district, and these are the laws, and we need to all follow those. take it very seriously.
Thank you. Any further? Deb?
Hi.
Hi, sorry.
That's
I'm looking over there. I think he had his hand up too. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. No, go ahead, Tom. I've had.
No, you're good. I just didn't see.
Oh,
So
okay.
go. Yeah, sorry.
You said you were in negotiations.
Yes.
Can you characterize the nature of those and perhaps describe what would be your optimal interactions within negotiations for contracts?
So what I would envision my role as a superintendent?
Yes.
I'm not, okay. So I am in there the only way I have ever viewed a superintendent being involved, because I remember I was on the, maybe I didn't tell you. I was on, when I was a union rep when I was a teacher, and I was on teacher negotiations on the teacher side. We went to mediation both times, so that was a very interesting journey in itself. So I've been on the union side, so I've seen that. I think, speaking of unions, I think it's very important, not to get off track, I will answer your question, is for me to build that relationship with the union leaders, right? You need to have that ability to have honest conversations about why I'm thinking about these decisions, why, it's all about the kids, but what I'm thinking, and be very clear about that. When I was principal, I always met with the union leaders on a regular basis and shared what was going on. And it was always just me and that union president kind of giving me feedback. We always wow. Sorry. We always left, wow.
It's been a long day.
Yes,
It's a real long day.
wow, all right. With a very clear understanding, and that. My role, as I see it, as a superintendent, and in my role right now, because I'm in there, so just so you know, from the school side, it's myself, the superintendent, the other assistant superintendent for business and finance, and then school committee members, right? And so our role is, I keep my mouth shut when we are in negotiations. I'll be very blunt, right? My mouth is shut. And they have occasionally asked in the sessions for the superintendent to clarify something. I think that is the superintendent's role, right? If one side or another is asking for a clarifying question, right? That's not giving anything away about strategy, it's about history or something that's being done right now, right? Where I'm at right now, I am asked my opinion in my role when we are closed door in the superintendent's office and we're in strategy session. When I'm asked, I will give reasoning and I will back that up with why I'm saying that, right? But I don't think it's my role, and as a superintendent, I would not think it's my role unless you ask me to be part of that. I know a contract is an agreement between the school committee and the union.
Thank you. Tillman?
So you've had a lot of different roles, a long list that you shared with us. What aspect of the superintendent role do you think you'll learn most about in the next year, let's say? Or I don't want to say what part are you least prepared for, but it's meant to be,
But that's what you're asking me?
What will be new to you, and what have you done least of?
It's going to be a big learning curve to learn Amherst Pelham, right? And it's not that I don't know about it, but I'm very respectful about. Let me go back. We talk a lot in our assistant superintendent's job alikes that superintendencies are all about 4 different frameworks. We use Bowman and Deal. I don't know, not to bore you guys, but I'm telling you like research. There's a political framework, there's a structural framework, a managerial framework, right? And I would need to look at all of those, right? I think for me, it would be learning the community and making sure that I am honoring what the community wants. I've been very respectful of that any place I've gone. And let me explain that. Petersham had beautiful, wonderful traditions that I hope they never go away. We started every school year and we ended every school year with the entire school around the well house doing like all sorts of things, right? And like, it's just very cool, right? There are traditions that I know are part of the fabric of that district. That's part of what I need to learn. Part of my big learning curve, and my biggest learning curve, is going through my entry plan. And you can tell I'm a talker, so keeping my mouth shut and listening, right? And asking questions and asking clarifying questions, right? And that's not hard for me. It's just, I feel comfortable. I feel like for all the reasons I told you, I think really what I've done has brought me to this position. I don't think it's hard, but it's a huge learning curve when you're in a new district. It's not about what Joni wants, it's what the community wants, right? So I can't project my feelings on it. There are mandates that we have from DESE that none of us can change, right? But other than that, I need to listen to those, right? And I need to figure out, like, what communication works well for Amherst Pelham. Some districts like it's overkill, some districts want more, you know, finding like those fine lines, I guess, the sweet spot will be my biggest challenge, right? And kind of it's gonna take me asking a lot of questions to figure out what those sweet spots are, and asking for feedback and say, okay, like, calm down on the communications or whatever, right? And to be very clear with me and listen to that, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Deb.
And nobody else? So, last question, I think, is, you got your licensure in 2021, or you started, you have your 3 years of,
This is my third year.
on your
So
initial.
I have to wait for me to complete this year, and I have already said to my superintendent, I need your letter saying that I've already
Complete.
done this for 3 years to get my professional status.
And is there, so that would be the completion of the one-year induction program with the trained mentor, is the letter from,
No, I've already done that.
you've already done that?
Yeah, my
So-
first year I did that. I am all set.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I met that requirement. I'm sorry, I thought you meant professional status.
There's 3 that I read, and yeah,
Yes.
yeah, you did all 3.
Yeah. And my current superintendent was my mentor.
Got it.
It was very nice. So,
Excellent.
yeah. She does a very nice job.
Any further questions? Is there anything else you would like to tell us we should know?
I think I've told you probably everything I would like to say. Let me think if there's anything else I wanted to say. I talked about all of that. I do want you, there's a fine line. I want you to understand there's a lot of state committees I'm in, but I'm not away from the district all the time. I want you guys to get that. Going to those things far outweighs like me being gone, because the knowledge you gain, the networking you gain is invaluable, right? And I think leadership in education is very lonely. And you come across 1,000 different things that you've never experienced and you never think you would. And you need those people that you can call up, that keep things confidential and help you navigate that world, right? And I think that's invaluable. And I have that, and I'm very blessed with that. And I have that network that I just want to make sure that you guys understand I was not communicating it any differently. I would be honored to be here. I would work my bottom off for you. I become very passionate. I'm very passionate about every district I've been in. And I've always left on good terms. Feel free to reach out to any of them. But it definitely is, it's never about Joni. I am not power hungry. It's me recognizing other people. You are going to see me giving credit for a lot of people to a lot of other people and not me. You all are going to know what I'm doing. I don't need to repeat what I'm doing. I'm not in it for the power or the recognition. I want the work to be done. And if you recognize others, that's how you build people up. That's how you're excited to be here. And that's why you want to stay here.
Excellent. Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
You're
Thank you for
welcome.
coming and
Thank you very much.
joining us. And
I did have one last question.
Yes.
Do you know when do you think you're going to be making decisions? And is that public, or how do I find out the outcome? I mean,
Sure.
like all of that.
So we have another candidate
Right.
coming
Yep. This week, tomorrow,
Thursday.
right? Yep.
Not
Yep. Right.
this week is a lot of things.
Right.
And then we have our deliberation meeting next Monday.
Okay. And is that public?
Yep.
Okay.
On the internet.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I will be there. Okay.
Yeah, so it will be here.
Okay.
And it's
Perfect.
also on, the Amherst.
Amherst Media.
Amherst, thank you, Amherst Media.
Okay, so Monday at what time?
I think that's
Now
right.
I'm testing you guys, sorry.
5:30.
I think it's 5:30.
Okay.
Oh, I will give you a real answer, hold on.
Okay,
There's
Uh,
no idea.
Yep,
It's 5:30 to 7.
perfect.
Oh.
5:30, yep.
Really,
Okay.
7?
And we're gonna do every
That's what it
night,
says,
all
5:30 to
90
7.
minutes.
Well, thank you very much. I would be honored, and I'm humbled that you brought me back, and I appreciate you listening to everything.
Great.
So thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
What part of Ohio?
I grew up in Findlay, Ohio.
Jesus.
Where are you
Well,
from?
no, Findlay is just, it's just one of those towns. I grew up in western Pennsylvania,
You did, what part?
Fayette County,
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
We lived
across
in
the
Mount
river.
Lebanon for 3 years. That's where my children were born.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
western Pennsylvania.
yeah. And I'm a Buckeye. You're not a Michigan fan, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay, all right. Okay, then I can still consider it. Okay.
You didn't blow it, though.
I know, right?
And UMass Amherst is not competing in football, so.
I move we adjourn the regional school committee.
Second.
Sarah, excellent.
I move that we adjourn Union 26.
Wait, hold on, we have to vote on the
Are we
region first.
voting?
Yeah, to adjourn. Everybody,
Oh.
adjourn. We are adjourned.
Union 26, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you very much.
All right. Amherst School Committee will reconvene in 5 minutes.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding.
Thank you very much.
They've been warned. They've been warned.
Oh, bird.
Thank you. I hope I don't take a header here, but thank you very much. I appreciate meeting all of you. Thank you.
Just to hang out, I have pretzels.
Pleasure, thank you. Thank you
very
for
much.
dinner,
Yeah,
both
well-
of you. It was wonderful talking to you. Nice to meet you in person.
Did you find your way back?
Yes, yeah, I got it.
Sarah,
Nice to see you in
being
person.
the
I
Grinch.
know, right? Yeah.
I don't think we
Nice to
do.
see you in
We have
person.
the other
Yeah.
I
And
wanted
nice
to
to meet
put
you.
it
Thank you so
so
much.
I know.
Yeah.
I will.
What
I
else
don't
do
think
we
I
have
actually
on this
canceled it.
agenda?
You know
I
what,
never
though?
put it
It's
on.
all right to visit the bathroom before you.
Yes,
leave.
it's just
Okay.
up the
I'll
stairs.
cancel the
Yep,
Google Doc
yep,
because
I know
we
where it's
can't
at.
have
I
it.
just wanna make sure.
No, because we have.
Guys didn't see me walking around wondering what I'm doing.
Oh, what time is it?
My mom can't take it.
No, me neither. Thank you. Good night, guys. Joe's going to. I think
Have a
it's-
good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, well.
Oh, well. No, no, it's not bad. It's just business stuff, right?
See you soon.
Yes.
Thursday. Can you get by?
Oh, yeah, I'm good, Deb.
Don't we have a meeting tomorrow?
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
my goodness.
No,
Not Mark.
to call the Amherst School Committee back to order at 9:01 PM on Tuesday, April 23rd. While the superintendent's trying to get the budget update projected, we're still having some technical difficulties. We'll just move on to other items. I posted a chair's update. Can't even remember what's in it, except I wanted to say about the superintendent evaluation coming up. All I want to do is let you know that that will be happening. I think at the next regular meeting of the region, Sarah Bess will be talking more about that. I do not need any volunteer. You can ignore that part. I will add that I'm going on Saturday to the Massachusetts Municipal Association's, I don't know, Rural and Western Mass Conference. So I can report back next month, anything of interest there. So that's all for my updates. Then I had no other school committee updates. Oh, but now there's one. Yes?
Just for members of the public, the third and final superintendent candidate finalist will have an online community forum tomorrow at 5:30, and then on Thursday at 6:30, an in-person community forum, and then on Thursday at 7:30, the public review. And all that can be found on the ARPS website at arps.org/SUPT search.
Okay, thank you. I skipped over approval of minutes from March 19th. I don't know if Debbie Westmoreland is still listening, but she can hear these comments on the recording, I hope. I have some corrections, but I'll let anyone else go first. If there's any comments on the, excuse me, draft minutes of March 19th. All right, I will note then that under, let's see, new and continuing business, item A, unless it's just a printer problem on my end, there was a stray underline, it's like a link saying save after at Ms. Leonard saves request, Ms. Wood explained. So there's something to remove there. Further on in that paragraph, near the end, one of the documents is, the file name to a document is given, but it was the wrong document. There were two documents pertaining to the proprietary items for the new elementary school, and the reference needs to be to the other document that is entitled Amherst Fort River Elementary School 24-03-15 SC meeting. And then in B, FY25 Amherst budget vote, in the very first line, I think something is missing after as amended following the comma. So I don't know what is missing, but I think perhaps could just remove the words following the. And that's all I had. Has anyone else noticed anything? Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended then?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Let's take a vote. Irv.
Aye.
Deb.
Yes.
Jennifer.
Yes.
Bridget.
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thank you. Doug, any luck with the?
It'll be here. That's about as good as we can get. I don't think we'll have success.
Oh, well, we're done now with that. So, oh, I see what you mean. You're using that screen. Okay.
Right.
Will Amherst Media be capturing?
Not so much.
Okay. Well, for the public, the superintendent is showing a one-page document summarizing the status of the budget at the end of the third quarter, and that document is attached in the board docs agenda for this meeting. Go ahead, Doug.
Okay. Let me get the mic up. close enough that you can hear me. So the short story, as has been the case the last couple of times we've met, is that our budget in the overall sense is in pretty good shape for being at the end of the third quarter. We have 4 areas we're going to need to take some action, potentially 3 for sure, and one that we may need to. We'll keep an eye on it as we go through. That being the transportation budget. We've had some additional level of repairs we've needed to do this year, which is kind of pushing hard on our budget. Hopefully we'll be in okay shape as we finish out the year. The other 3 areas in the expenses portion of our budget, facilities, English language education, and special education, district-wide special education, are all currently over budget and in some ways expected. In both special education and in facilities, we have staff positions that are open, and so we're having to contract services. That tends to drive up and be more expensive than personnel. But we have some resources in other parts of the budget that are holding up in good shape, and so should be able to be used to support that as we get into quarter 4. In English language education, we have we're over budget, but a lot of that is an encumbrance. In other words, we've not spent the money yet. Looking at our spending to date, our actual sort of cash out the door, we're in okay shape. It's at about 50% or so, maybe a little more than 50% of our budget. So I think we'll be all right. I don't think we'll realize all of that encumbered expense as we finish the year in English language education. And so in all, I think those areas that we have concerns about are well understood, and we're keeping an eye on it, and we will have some resources in other parts of our appropriated budget that can provide support and cover those costs. And when we come in, probably in either late May or probably actually in June, we'll ask you to move some budget amounts around to sort of balance out the budget. From a payroll standpoint, we're in good shape, to be honest. In the fact that where we're sitting on the budget right now is right on track of where we think we should be, and so I think we'll be right on target for the payroll as it finishes out the year. One thing to remind you is in fiscal '24 we had not settled contracts at the time we approved our budget, and so there are resources in our sort of in our control account section that ultimately we would apply to the salaries to sort of cover some of the costs of the negotiated contracts, but we haven't needed to do that yet, and I'm not sure we will. So that's a fortunate thing. In other words, essentially by virtue of some open positions, late hirings, whatever, we've been able to sort of be on track at the current point in time. It'd be nice to have the staff, but we're in the same boat a lot of districts are in with certain positions. It's really, really difficult to find and hire those folks. So we're from a budgetary standpoint sort of right on the money. And I think that we're fortunate to be in this circumstance, to be honest, given the inflationary pressures we've experienced in the last couple of years. So I think we'll be in good shape to finish out the year. We don't have to freeze our budget or anything like that at this point. I think we're in okay shape. So I think that's all I really wanted to share, and I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has relative to what they've seen there.
Jennifer. So I'm looking at the big negative number in the encumbered and projected column, and you mentioned why it's negative for the salaries line, that it's due to the UMass strategic school choice and UMass strategic partnership funds. And for district-wide special ed, there's also a large negative number. Is that circuit breaker?
Yeah, mostly.
Oh, okay.
That's mostly circuit breaker there, yeah.
Thank you. And then,
and again, it's a bit artificial when you see it this way. In
Yeah.
other words, we haven't actually formally done the transition of cost in our accounting system, and so when we prepare this, we are able to manually put that in to sort of recognize that. Likewise, there's certain expenses, like in transportation, that we put in our estimated costs where it currently sits formally in the region, and we have to pay the region back. So there's a few places where we make those kinds of things and try to align and represent the budget as it stands.
okay, and then, thank you. Another question. You mentioned the substitute salary line is higher than expected, partly due to COVID requirements. And I think there was like a mandatory 5-day, whatever, quarantine for COVID, but I think that has since been lifted. But is this
Well,
quarter?
the lifting of that ban is only been in like the last 2
Okay,
or 3
that's
weeks. So it's,
Oh.
yeah, it
pretty
literally, so I think federally it got lifted earlier, but at the state
Gotcha.
level, it was only like the week before the break, maybe.
Okay.
So it's really pretty recently that changed for us. And so, yeah, but this is through the end of March, and certainly was in effect there. So it's had its impact on us, and just generally, I think there's a level of absenteeism that's concerning. And we were talking about it with students, and we've got the same experience with staff in a lot of ways too, for a lot of the same reasons.
Thank you.
Is it too early to know whether there'll be ESSER funds remaining to carry forward?
Well, there's some planned ESSER funds to be remaining. Whether or not there'll be
right,
additional ESSER funds,
extra,
you know, we'll do what we can to preserve that. We'll also, I mean, some of the strategies I've talked about in some of the other budgets about using ESSER funds and therefore preserving other revolving funds or circumstances like school choice. We'll make some choices, pardon the pun, about that. I think we'll probably leverage most of what we budgeted for ESSER funds. We may have a little bit that we don't use. I don't think it'll be a huge impact. But once we know more certain where we're at as far as finishing out this fiscal year, we'll, you know, the ESSER funds have to be expended by the end of September. We will, you know, do everything we can to spend all of them. And basically every expense, not every expense, but a large number of expenses right at the beginning of the fiscal year we'll charge exclusively. So the first quarter update
It's going to look
is
really
going
good.
to look really weird probably, because we'll have shifted all these costs early in the year
Yeah.
to ESSER, and so it'll look like we've spent like 27 cents or
money.
something, and it will really, the reality will be a little different from that, but
Okay.
yeah.
Any other questions on the update? Yes, Bridget.
Just facilities, can you tell us more about it? And I think mainly like, are those going to be the kinds of costs we see going forward, or is there something special that went wrong this year?
I think there's a couple factors. So one, and we've talked about it a fair amount, is the sort of trash, the cost for trash removal is higher than expected. And we budgeted for that appropriately for the coming year, because the contract, we have a better sense of what that's going to be and what they call tipping fees are going to be. You know, I think that we will, even that's encumbered under facilities is likely to be reduced a little bit in the, you know, like what we've estimated even for the remaining part of the year for facilities will probably be not quite as much as what's shown there under the encumbrance and projected column. So we currently have about 93,000 there. It'll probably be a little less than that, so it'll help a little bit. I'm trying to think, there was one other thing that we noted the trash. What was the other thing we noted? I'm drawing a blank now. Oh, the trades. You know, the other thing is that we do contracted services for our trades because we haven't been able to hire those positions. That may persist in future years. I mean, we're currently negotiating contract. One of the things they're looking at is ways to structure some of that in order to attract people in the trades to work for us. You know, it's an interesting thing. We have a lot of great benefits, and for folks that work and have their own sort of trade business like plumbing or electrical, you know, it's you have to sort of paint the picture of what you offer as a school district around regular hours, paid holidays, health insurance. You know, when you start looking at health insurance costs, you know, when you pay 100% of it as opposed to 20% or 25%, it's a pretty significant, you know, increase to your usable income, but it's not, when you look at like the per hour rate, it doesn't look as good, but then when you sort of consider whole package, so I think that's some of the stuff we'll need to do as an employer, and this is not just for folks in the trades. I think there's a number of ways in which we can, you know, market ourselves to folks and indicate the, you know, the strong benefits package that has a real financial impact for folks. But I think in the short term, yeah, our some of our expenses that are showing up there are going to continue to show up there, and you know, we're still hopeful to hire folks to work for us, and it's better on a number of levels. There's an efficiency, there's you know, economy related to the fact that people are familiar with our systems and they can be efficient with their work, and they just have a certain ownership because they're, you know, an employee. So we're hopeful to be able to fill those trade spots We have some filled, but not all of them. Hopefully in the future they'll get a little better.
Thank you. Okay. Doug, do you have any other update, any superintendent's update for us?
Just a couple of things. So one thing that I will say, and you know, I have to say I'm going to apologize personally to the Jewish community in the area, because we are on the second night of Passover tonight with that, and the first 2 nights of the Passover week are when most folks have their Seder, and so I think that, you know, in the various hubbub around budgets and scheduling meetings and that sort of thing, I think we just dropped the ball on this one and didn't consider that as a factor, and it's unfortunate because I think it limits the participation for some families, because I think someone made me aware that the JCA in town was having their sort of community Seder tonight, which probably limited some folks from tuning in and listening. I mean, we'll try to get the recordings of this and the other superintendent candidates, you know, up and available for people to review. But I did want to mention that a couple of people have mentioned that to me today, and I want to recognize that we probably should have been much more attuned to that schedule. You know, oftentimes Passover and Easter coincide fairly well. This year they're very different, and I think that's, you know, I noticed it back when Easter was happening and went, oh wait, Passover is much later this year, and then didn't really sort of register that more formally when we got to scheduling here in April. So I did want to sort of mention that and make note that it was an oversight and an unfortunate one. The second thing I wanted to share was, and mostly just to give you a heads up, you'll get a lot more on this in May when Katie Richardson is able to come and spend some time with us and talk about Comandante's program. But we're going to be having outreach to families around, you know, the new year in Comandante's. But one of the programmatic changes, and they've been spending quite a bit of time on this over the last months to review sort of the structure of the program. You saw a hint of it in the Student Opportunity Act, but we're going to shift the initial model of percentage of Spanish versus English. So right now it's a 50-50 model. That's what we implemented originally. We're reconsidering that, and we're going to move to a different model, and we'll phase it in over a couple of years. And what they're finding in doing the sort of due diligence around this and review of existing and looking at other programs like ours is that going with a much more immersive Spanish aspect of the program. So in the very first year in kindergarten, going with a 90-10, 90% Spanish, 10% English.
Talking about instruction, not
Instruction,
the
yeah.
students. Not,
Yeah, the students are going to be the same. There's no change in sort of population.
okay.
It's really how the instruction happens. And so it's going to be much more immersive in Spanish to begin with, so 90% in kindergarten. Then it'll be 80% in first grade, and then I think it goes to, make sure of this, I have a little note here, and then it goes to, 90-10 in kindergarten. It'll be 90-10 in first grade, and then in second grade it'll go to 80-20. But that'll be a 3-year rollout as we do that. So, and in grades 3 and above it'll be at 50%. But the idea being that next year will just be 90-10 in kindergarten. So all the new families that are coming into kindergarten will experience a 90-10 program. Then they'll continue to experience that their second year, and then they'll go to 80-20 in second grade. And then when they go to third grade, that'll be a shift to that sort of 50-50. So we're making that shift. They've spent a fair amount of time looking at this, and I'm going to lean on my quotes from Katie about this. The idea is the primary reason is to build a stronger foundation in Spanish in the early grades to support students in accessing grade level content in Spanish in the upper grades. Research demonstrates that increased instructional time in Spanish leads to increased outcomes in Spanish for all students, as well as faster reclassification of English learners. So I think the idea is that in looking at different dual language programs, some of them local and some of them more nationally, seeing this kind of a model with a 90-10 in the early, then phasing into that 50-50 over a couple of years is ultimately in the long term better for full dual language access. So we just want to give you a heads up that that's going to be something you're going to see in like the Student Opportunity Act, but more importantly you'll see in outreach materials and the meetings that we have coming up around kindergarten and enrollment in Comandante's program. So just want to make sure you guys are aware.
Is that something, I mean, I guess we're not being asked to vote on? It's not a sufficiently large change?
It's a
I mean, I
change,
have
but-
many questions, but it's
Yeah,
late, so.
yeah. No, I think the thing is that, and when Katie comes to the next meeting, she'll
Okay.
sort of paint that picture and sort of process and everything for you in that regard. I would suggest, you know, this is sort of, it's not purely in the realm of yours to expressly
okay.
choose or not choose.
It's not a curriculum, okay.
It's curricular, but it's not. In other words, we're not changing the curriculum, we're changing the percentage of exposure. You know, that might be a fine point, but
Okay.
I didn't want to necessarily presume that it was one thing or the other. But you know, you'll get a much fuller explanation. You know, I was a little late in letting Katie know that she wasn't having to come tonight, and so she got most of her presentation ready, which is actually good. But she had more time and wanted more time to sort of fill it in. So that'll definitely be on your next full agenda, and she'll be happy to sort of share the thinking and the ideas, the rationale behind all of it.
Great, thank you. Anything else? Nope. All right, warrants.
I have a few, but I'll be fast. I, Jennifer Shao, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $781,482.39 for payroll dated 4/17/24. It's coming. I, Jennifer Shaw, authorized by my signature to payables in the amount of $169,682.34 for payroll dated 4/5/24. I, Jennifer Shaw, authorized by my signature to payables in the, oh, I just did that. Oh, no, wait. It's a different one. $786,793.14 dated 4/3/24. I, Jennifer Shaw, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $203,319.95 for the warrant dated 3/22/24. This includes general fund expenses of $72,123.34, revolving fund expenses of $19,336.70, grant fund expenses of $79,747.60, and capital fund expenses of $32,112.31. And last one. I, Jennifer Shaw, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $1,935.34 for payroll dated 1/24/24.
Thank you. There are no gifts, none that I know of. So agenda planning, again, you can send me any ideas or requests. We don't need to go over them now, but I will let you know what's on the draft agenda for May is, well, I guess we don't need to vote on the sixth grade move. I don't think there's more we need to do next month specifically. We'll hear about kindergarten enrollment projections generally, and the capacities of schools to hold all those students without redistricting. And the superintendent already spoke a little bit to that. We may hear about school choice slots, how many, and what grades. We'll hear about the ELL instructional model, and I guess that includes Comandante's, or are we going to have both? We will
It'll be
work
both.
that out.
It'll be both.
Okay. All
Sorry,
right.
it'll be both.
And probably at that meeting, we will be talking about the evaluation of our superintendent. But I think the region will take the lead in organizing that. Okay, so anything anybody wants to say? How about a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
Deb, okay. No, there's no debate. Bridget?
Aye.
I am an aye. Jennifer?
Yes.
Deb?
Aye.
Irv?
Aye.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Thank you, Amherst Media. And thank